Hold on, let me turn this fan off. Hold on. Ugh. It was I mowed the grass and so it was hot. Well, I was hot, and so I had the fan on. It's actually kind of cold, but when you're out there working, you work up a little bit of a sweat. But anyhow, that's not what this video is about. You guys don't care about my sweat issues and lack thereof, because I have CU. But you do care about this video. Be sure to join the Discord, the discussion of the Discord down in the discussion box or description box below. No, in the description box, sorry. Have a whole lot of things going on right now, right? Potential new investment for me. It just fell in my lap and wasn't really something I expected, but I have a new investment thing that literally is a pretty big deal. And it fell in my lap. So I'm like, might consider doing that. I gotta check out the pertinence of it, and then I bought some more stock today. I was just in a buying spree. So I'm like, let's do some things. But anyway, this video talks about Indianapolis's Red Line. Now, let's go through a little bit, because a lot of people don't like the Red Line in Indianapolis. Some people like it, many don't. And let's go into some of the details as to what's going on. Let me look up the agency, because it's not IndyGo only, but let's see, hold on. Let's just see what that is. I think it's something like that. It's been a long time. It's been over 10 years since I lived there. Yeah, it's IndyConnect, but I thought it was something else. I think that might be it. I'm not sure. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Indianapolis built a BRT bus line, which they called the Red Line, which here in this area, Seattle has the light rail system that Indianapolis wishes it has. But it's expensive. To be honest with you, it's very expensive, and you have to be in a region that makes sense and where people are going to support it. Here, traffic congestion sucks. And the difference between here and Indianapolis is known as the crossroads of America. You have so many interstates that run in and around Indianapolis that you can get through the city pretty easily. The crazy thing that cities do, Indianapolis has done it, Columbus has done it, Atlanta has done it, Houston has done it, and all of them have massive traffic issues, is building a big ring around the city. And it's known as the Circle City. 465 is not a good idea, because anytime you build a ring around a city like that, it creates traffic issues. It just does. So they have created a traffic problem with 465. Other than that, if they didn't have that issue, the interstates could move people about relatively easy. Indianapolis is basically mostly all of Marion County, right? So when you look at Indianapolis' true population, it's not anywhere near what they claim, but because they're looking at the county. If you look at the original district of what the city is, it's quite a bit smaller, but it looks, the city has tried to be a big city. It's just like Lexington, Kentucky. Lexington, Kentucky that's not all Lexington. You're looking at Fayette County. So they're taking the whole county and saying it's the city, right? So as a result, you have a city that is much bigger than really what it is, okay? So that's the first part. So that's the second part. Interstates, a lot of them, second part is, it doesn't have the population density that you may think, right? Because it doesn't have the population density that you may think, and it looks big because it's sprawled out, the suburban sprawl and the city sprawl is a big problem. Unlike Seattle, which can't expand anywhere. I mean, you're going to go in the water, or you're going to go into another city, or you can't expand here. Like, we're restricted by mountains, we're restricted by native land, we're restricted by water, we're restricted. We can't grow anymore. We have to grow up. Indianapolis, you can keep building on forever. There's nothing but cornfields. You could just keep building, right? So you have these big sprawling suburbs where people have big old McMansions. We used to call them McMansions. because a developer will come through and they pop in all the same. You'll have like maybe 8 different designs or 6 different designs and a few different colors. But if you look straight down the street, they all look the same, right? Vinyl villages is what we also call them. You have a lot of those, and it's easy and cheap for a developer to build. Land is super cheap, and building similar makeups of homes is super cheap, but you can charge a pretty decent amount and you can get people to buy it, right? People want home ownership, and you have a decent yard and all that. Throw up a picket fence. But the problem is that you have to support all of that infrastructure, all the roads, all of the water lines, all the gas, sewer lines, all that stuff. It's expensive. Plus you throw in police, fire, and all that. It's expensive. And these cities expand. Carmel, Westfield, what's the other one? Fishers. When we're talking about the north side, Zionsville, Greenwood down in the south. I know what I'm talking about. Okay? Avon. Let's see what else. Danville. There's a bunch, okay? Speedway's kind of locked. But everybody else, Lawrence, they can just keep building out and there's nothing to stop them. Because there's just land. And farmers are saying, yep, you can take it because, heck, if you're giving me some money and it's enough money, I'll take it. And so that's what they do. But the problem is with all that sprawl, it costs a lot to run anything, a bus line, rail line, or anything. It's expensive because you're covering a huge amount of miles, like a massive amount. I remember I lived on 82nd Street in Allisonville. Everybody from Indianapolis knows where that is. And it's in a place called Castleton. And so I lived up there and I worked close. It was in Plainfield. That's another one, Plainfield. I worked over in Plainfield. Driving up 465 was basically a half an hour drive. 30 minutes. It's 30 miles. I kid you not, 30 miles. If you go around 465, it's 30 miles. From my house to my work, all in the same city, roughly. All in the same city. Here, 30 miles is from Tacoma to Seattle, Washington, or 30 miles is from Tacoma to Olympia. So when you're talking about trying to build a light rail system, it's literally connecting Tacoma to Seattle, which we're doing here, but the cost to do so is billions of dollars. Indianapolis has got some companies, but they don't have Amazon and Microsoft and they don't have 4 million people to leverage from like we do here. It's different. They don't have the incomes. They don't have the high property tax like we do. They just don't. It's a completely different thing. So, and also the local government and the state government, it's a no-go when it comes to rail. Early on, I worked with a group that wanted to have a heritage streetcar line. They wanted to go into downtown Indianapolis and they wanted to connect certain points of interest because downtown Indianapolis is very walkable. It's a very convention-friendly city, has a lot of what you really want to go to all in one area. It made sense to actually have a heritage streetcar system to connect those areas. It used to be Conseco Fieldhouse. It's something different now. I know it's been a while. You have Lucas Oil Stadium right there where the Colts play. So you have where the Pacers play, the Colts play. You have the bar district that's down there. You have the convention center, which is always full of conventions. You have the shopping area that's down there because there's a mall downtown. You have White River State Park. Is it a state park? I don't know. White River's over there. You have Victory Field, which is where the minor league baseball team is. You have the zoo right there. You could easily connect these nodes pretty easy because everything is within the mile. Some things are a little bit outside of that, but it's within the mile, right? So if the people at IndyConnect and IndyGo, I even tried to talk to them. Nobody listened. And the group that wanted to do the heritage line was trying to find the money to do it, and they came up with the amount to do it, and it wasn't a whole lot. And it was going to be a very simple system. It was going to be a one-track system. which is what Seattle used to have the waterfront line. And it basically, if you go to some old videos on YouTube, you'll find it. They were green and white, heritage streetcars. And most of the system was a one-track system. When it got to a particular point, it deviated. Hold on, Zoe's got to turn that down. Zoe likes to blast the TV, man. She's here and the kids are with Noe at the studio. But anyway, so when it got to a certain point, a midway point, it had where it was double tracked. And there were certain stations where it would be double tracked, but mostly it's a one-track system. And it worked very well. Streetcar would just go its way. It would then, continue. It would just up and down a certain area. Well, this is kind of what that group wanted to do in Indianapolis. And they wanted IndyGo, which could have supported this. The city could have supported this. And the counties that they're wanting to do all this, Carmel, which is in Hamilton County, I think. It's been a while since I've been up there. They could have supported this because you basically have a convention city and you're connecting all of these businesses and attractions and stuff together, and local people would also be able to use this. And you're talking for something that would have been, because it's such a short mile, it's a mile long. Even with pretty fancy stations, you're talking maybe 30 million or so using heritage streetcars. We're not talking about the streetcars we have in Seattle or here in Tacoma. We're talking about the heritage ones, the ones that were kind of rebuilt. You can get them from, I forget now where, but there's companies here in the US that you can actually get those, and they're not as expensive as the modern ones, right? But this guy wanted the heritage ones because he was an older guy and he just liked them. I don't know. But it was also much more affordable. That would have connected the convention, tourists, and locals and all of that. Now, not everybody would have been happy, but it would have actually connected people. The next thing that they should have done, and I was trying my best along with other people to say to this IndyConnect, which they used to be something else, is to not connect Carmel to downtown, but to connect the airport to downtown. If you're going to do a BRT line, because the city's so sprawled out, you can't really do light rail without spending a lot of money. And you would have to do it in segments. You would have to do very short lines that don't go very far because the cost is so much. Well, then people are going to be pissed because you've spent $100 million and you only went 10 miles. Well, in Indianapolis, 10 miles is nothing. So people will be pissed. All the rest of the city's ignored, but you got this one little section that has rail. But if you connect the airport to downtown, you probably would have got a little bit more buy-in because it's a convention city. It hosts a lot of events. The BRT line would have ran from downtown into Speedway, which Indianapolis Motor Speedway is there. It's the biggest, I think it used to be, the biggest stadium, if you will. It holds more people than any other, I think, that it used to be. But anyway, you could have really and truly made that work. You could have had BRT, a true BRT system, and not just a modified city bus that stops every 10, 15 seconds. But you would have had a BRT system that would have connected all the way to the airport, into Speedway, then into downtown, and then you would have a light rail system that would then connect points of interest, right? Along with the transit center that they built and all that. Looks great. I haven't seen it in person, but I've seen pictures of it. Last time I was in Indianapolis, I didn't get a chance to see it, but that would have probably made some sense. You would have had a little bit more buy-in, right? You would have connected areas that are kind of neglected, right? When you start connecting the hoity-toity places and wealthy places like Carmel, Indiana, you're going to piss a bunch of people off because those people typically don't use any sort of public transit. Keep in mind, IndyGo was the one, for a city its size, it had the fewest number of people that actually used the bus service. IndyGo, which is the name of their bus system, is very inefficient. It's just not very practical. There's not enough buses. They're not running often enough. And why is that? Because you have such a massive city In terms of just size, it takes a lot to run that. A lot. And so that is the reason why you have so much inefficiency, and there's other things, but that's one of the big, reasons. But had they done that, had they would have listened, and this IndyConnect, which they were something else at the time, had they listened instead of just blowing it off, I remember the email of just like, that's not what we're going to do. We actually have a plan. We have our board, and our board is wanting to go a completely different direction. And they wanted to basically take there's an old, is it nickel line? Apologize, Indy folks, if I forget, but there used to be a train line that ran from Fishers, I believe, all the way down to downtown, and the fare train is what that is now. And part of that track is destroyed. So there's sections where there's no track at all. There's sections where there is track, but it's in bad repair. And so they would have to repair all of that. And what they wanted to do at the time was to repair that entire line, run it all the way up into Fishers, and have a light rail system. That's what they wanted to do. We suggested that if you're wanting to do some sort of light rail, don't start up in Fishers and build down. That's expensive. Why not start in downtown? Because you have more, in Indianapolis, more of the poorer people or middle income people are going to be in the city itself. Not saying that you don't have middle income people in the suburbs, but it's not a good look to start at the most wealthiest parts of the state, really. So why not start downtown, which supports business and different things, and then kind of build north if you can, repair the tracks if you will. But the problem is some of that line is now trails, I believe. I could be wrong. There's others where they've turned trails and they did a bunch of stuff like that. So they couldn't do light rail in certain areas. They dang sure couldn't build underground and build subway systems like they're doing here in Seattle. They couldn't do that. Too expensive. So they thought they can build above ground and actually take care of that. It was just a bad plan. And I knew it was not going to work when they suggested it. It would have been cool, but I just knew it wasn't going to work. And there was other folks that said this is not going to work. But there was a time when, and I don't know if they still have that website up, there was a group that was trying to bring a heritage streetcar system to Indianapolis, and basically we were given the middle finger, to be honest with you. And in fact, one of the models that I said could be was the Tacoma Link light rail system that's here in Tacoma. I said we could do the same thing. Except the guy wanted it to be a heritage streetcar. So it's like whatever, because we have a modern streetcar system, but we call it light rail. But regardless, it could have been similar, because guess what? It is a dual track, but also single track system as well. Certain sections were, before they did the expansion, certain sections were mainly just a single track and then dual in certain areas, similar to what they did in Seattle. And it's just a 1.6 mile deal. But you don't have to have it all hoity-toity like what they have it here. Here, they blow tons of money on stations and stuff like that. It didn't have to be like that. It could have been very basic, very plain, right? And Indianapolis did not do that. And in fact, one of the guys that was running IndyGo said, I would like to listen in on the conversation and see how that goes. I really think rail would be a good idea. However, the IndyConnect people said no. This wasn't the direction they wanted to go. They didn't want to go with a heritage streetcar line that focuses on downtown. They darn sure didn't want to connect the airport to downtown, which would have been a smart thing to do. They didn't want to do that. So as a result, they decided to go rail. Well, rail failed because A, nobody really has full faith in IndyGo because it has not done a good job over time. And it is a car city. Indianapolis is a very vehicle car city. At one point, vehicles were made there. I know my history, okay? I don't remember the name of the company, but it's close to downtown. That's a manufacturing city, okay? And it was. So now you have this plan failing, and they're like, well, then now let's do buses. By the time they decided to do buses, I was moving and living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and planning my move here to Seattle, and they wanted to do BRT lines. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe they have some sense, because connecting the airport would be a great thing. Nope. That's one of the ideas, is to definitely build a line there, but that wasn't their first plan. Their first plan is the same thing, connecting the north side down to downtown. And that's not what you do. Even here in Seattle, when they built the light rail system, the true light rail system, and they connected downtown to the airport, it didn't go to the airport at first. It actually stopped before that, and people were pissed, because they said at least connect the airport. That's something that's very needed. Downtown and airports are very important. Why San Diego hasn't done that doesn't make sense. They have a very good light rail system. It goes everywhere except for downtown, or except for the airport, which is downtown. You literally can hit a ball hard enough and hit downtown from the airport. But you have the wrong people in charge, in my opinion. So you could have easily captured the people who don't want to rent a car, don't want to do any of that nonsense, and actually have that money go towards restaurants and different things like that, which stay in your community, versus sending money to Hertz and Dollar Rental and all these other people. They could actually have a basic streetcar even connect the airport to downtown. Won't do it. And it's literally right there. You fly in and you right there downtown. You can walk. Actually, we walked from the airport to downtown. They won't do it. And so you have the same thing. When they connected the airport to Seattle, the system just exploded in terms of just ridership. And we became the city that had the highest number of people who take light rail or take public transit than any other place. And so it works. It makes sense. People are more likely to buy into it. And they saw how successful that was. And they said, well, heck, if I can just sit in a train and not sit on I-5 here in a parking lot to get to the airport, perfect. I'll do that. Never mind, it didn't go out to all these other places. It went from Westlake downtown all the way to the airport. Eventually it went to the airport. And people were happy with that. Now, after they have asked for funding, they've asked for funding several times, and we've approved, but these are billions of dollars. We're talking, I think, a total package of $50 billion for the complete light rail system that they're wanting to do. That includes maintenance facilities, parking garages. One stop will have 3 big giant stations. We're not talking like what Portland has, where you have these little stops and you just have a basic thing. We're talking underground. We're talking a bunch of big. It doesn't have to be that way, right? They don't have to spend that type of money to do it, but that's what they're doing. So now everybody wants it, right? Every neighborhood, every community here wants it. Bring it here. Tacoma is supposed to get it. Everett is supposed to get it. Bellevue is already getting it. Redmond, all these big tech areas are getting it. But they never built the light rail system, even though you have Bellevue, which has headquarters of Microsoft close by, right? Amazon is there also. They're in Seattle, but they're also in Bellevue. And all these other big tech giants, Expedia.com, all of those were there. They never built the light rail system connecting. Ooh, that's nice. Nice. They never built the light rail connecting Seattle to Bellevue first. They never did that. Bellevue is one of the most wealthy, expensive places in the entire state of Washington. It's more expensive to buy a home there than it is in Seattle. They never did do that. Why? Nobody would support it. As bad as traffic here is, as bad as parking is here, as bad as it is, no one would support a light rail system going from Seattle to Bellevue first. They didn't do that. What they did was they built it from downtown through South Seattle. That was a little bit of a rub because South Seattle is the poorer section of Seattle. And they built it above grade. A lot of the system in Seattle is underground. But they built this above grade, and people didn't like that. They were building above grade in the poorer sections because if you're wanting to turn on a street, the light rail system shuts down the traffic signal. So you have to wait. So people are like, that's not fair. The chances of getting hit by train is a lot higher, whether you're walking or driving or what have you. So people felt like in the poor section, you basically neglected us. True. So now they connected this area, but they also connected South Seattle to downtown. So poor people have a chance to go downtown to work. Whatever job that they're doing, they have that connection. Keep in mind, it also connected the stadium district because we have SoDo, which is where the Seahawks play, and you have the Mariners where they play and all that. It connected that section also to downtown, so it worked. So people, wherever they are, park downtown, and you can just take the train into SoDo, and you don't have to worry about the cluster that comes out of that. It's bad. The Sounders, the football, the professional soccer team also plays there. You don't have to worry about it, right? So hold on a second. Okay, sorry, everybody's doing work today. They have their yard, they're mowing their yard over there. They're cleaning out some stuff over there because finally we get a nice break in all the rain. But anyway, so it worked. It made sense, right? They connected the poorer sections first, but it also connected the airport. It kind of did everything at one go. That is the way that you do it. You don't connect the wealthy area first and say, screw everybody else. And so I get that they're saying, well, Carmel's an economic player and blah, 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 blah. That doesn't matter because Bellevue is the second economic center in the entire state after Seattle. Even though it's smaller than Tacoma, they didn't connect Tacoma to Seattle even. They didn't even do that first. They connected the airport to, they would obviously have to connect the airport before they would Tacoma, but that's what they did. That's what they did. They didn't even connect Everett, where Boeing does most of their manufacturing. They also do it down in Boeing Field, which is south of Seattle, but up in Everett, north of the city, north of Seattle. They didn't even connect it up there first, where Boeing has a huge presence. Thousands and thousands and thousands, like 40,000 people, something like that, work at Boeing. They didn't even do that. So you have to do it the right way, and IndyGo and IndyConnect didn't do it the right way. They built this BRT system, the Red Line, and the same bus system, the same bus manufacturer that Albuquerque used is what they're using. Now, Albuquerque also made the same blunder. Albuquerque, you had a mayor at the time who refused to do any sort of rail system, and he wanted BRT. And as he was edging out the door, he promised BRT. He promised it with the company, and basically it has sat and sat and sat. Finally, I think it's in operation. But nearby in Tucson, they built a streetcar system that's very successful. And the economy of Tucson is by far stronger than it is in Albuquerque. It just is. So sometimes you have the wrong people getting in the way, and this is an example of that. Indianapolis will never probably have rail. It just isn't going to happen because of basically laws that have been passed and things like that. The bus system needs some severe work on it. To be honest with you, they could have easily worked on passing a very small tax that would have actually made sure that you had at least bus stops everywhere that had somewhat of a shelter. Shelters are not that expensive when you're looking at an agency and they buy it in bulk. They could have easily put up a lot of little shelters in many of most of the city and actually had information at those shelters, like security lights and things like that at the shelters. These are basic things that you can find even in the developing world. They could have done that. And they then could have invested in more buses. You don't need a big old huge hefty bus. Sometimes you can get you a 16-passenger bus. And I think people would be happy with a 16-passenger bus if they had a lot more frequency than a 40 or 55-passenger bus that comes every 30 minutes or 45 minutes or an hour, and it takes you forever to connect. People just aren't going to ride it. But if, again, I'd rather spend and buy 5 little buses as opposed to one big bus and amplify my coverage area and service availability. But yet they didn't do that because Indianapolis wants to be viewed as a big city, when they could have done the smart thing. Because they're so big as a city, they could have bought a lot smaller buses, got a great deal on those little small buses. And we're talking buses that hold, 20 people or whatever it is. Bowling Green, Kentucky has those type of buses, right? You could have taken buses like that and you could have put them throughout the city. It just makes sense. Once you start to build up the ridership and you build up the revenue and you build up the confidence, then you can probably start to get bigger buses, but expand that coverage. Make sure that the times are cut down. Because the city is so big, they should have had transit stops in many, when I went to Cleveland, there's parking rides. There ain't no parking rides up in Indianapolis. There, along the interstates, the bus system should have bought land and literally had parking rides where you can park your car, a bus will come and ferry people into the city. It's just point and go. Not 15 stops. It goes from downtown to the parking ride and boom, back and forth. They could have did that with a 15 or 20 passenger bus or whatever. They could have done that and have those throughout the city. They could have done that. They could do a park and ride right now, maybe they do, to the airport and downtown and just boom, back and forth. That is better than just saying, nah, we're going to go for the gusto. And it just doesn't make any sort of sense. But these park and rides would have been a lot better, connecting different areas. Have a park and ride up in Fishers. Have a park and ride in Lawrence. Connect Fishers and Lawrence, or whatever you want to do, or, right there in Castleton. Have park and rides that close. Have the next one kind of, I forget my locations now, but kind of in closer to the center of Indianapolis. And then to downtown. I don't know. But something would have been better than what they're doing. Because then all these other buses, instead of trying to navigate into downtown, they just head over directly to these parking rides and drop people off. It's not just you park your cars there. These also work by buses going from one location to the other to the correct parking ride, and people will find which one they need to go to. It would ferry them over and give them a direct route to where they got to go much faster. So you don't necessarily need to even invest in a lot of buses. You have to invest in more infrastructure that people can see that makes sense. And there's plenty of places that they can do that. There's plenty of places in the city that has houses that are not in great condition or just lots that they could easily do that. But yet they don't do it. Anyhow, wanted to do a video that talks about the Red Line in Indianapolis, the bus system. That is one of the big problems that the city has. It can be gets a lot of tech jobs. It can get a lot of this and a lot of that. When they try to get Amazon, I said it ain't going to happen. That would be one city that won't get it because they don't do anything when it comes to their mass transit. Won't happen. Won't happen. As a matter of fact, Nashville got it. And let me tell you about Nashville. Nashville, which is 60 miles from my hometown, they have their own commuter rail system that they're also expanding. So their commuter rail line, they used an old freight line, and they bought some of the cars from Chicago, the Chicago Metro, and they use these double-decker carriages, and they have diesel trains, and they've been connecting towns. Now, Indianapolis could do that, but it didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? It could have did that. Didn't even do it. Even connecting and I don't know the rail system there in terms of freight, they could have done that easily. Easily. Look at it's the Music Star Line in Nashville, Tennessee. Look at what it connects. It connects cities. It doesn't stop 40 different times. It connects one city to the next until you get to Nashville. And it goes out pretty far. It was the cheapest commuter rail system, I believe, at the time. The cheapest one. Work smarter, not harder. Anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you join the Discord down in the description box below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.